So this is what nut cracking should be like. This is a big shellbark hybrid from Badger Set. You crack it, and this, these aren't fully wet, so they didn't hold together perfectly. This is maybe 5% moisture content, but it's still two decent halves. And this is a massive nut. It's like a 4 or 5 gram kernel. It's a little thin. It's only 40% kernel, but it's an interesting tree. Tastes like a shellbark. Here's another one I just cracked. It's just coming out beautifully. Not stuck in the corners. You don't need any clippers to take it out. Clippers are the worst. Here's another nut. It's also from Badger Set. It's another shellbark hybrid. This one is a beautiful nut, other than it doesn't crack well, and the tree only produces 10 nuts a year, even though it's massive. But the shell is super thin. It's like 54% kernel, typically. And the kernel is fat. It's really, really thick. It tastes like a shellbark. Obviously a hybrid, not just a pure shellbark. Yeah, not cracking out beautifully. But one to move forward in the generations with, not necessarily grafted, but as a seedling. Here's some more kernel from it. Here's another nut. This is, I'm not trying to only talk about shellbark hybrids, but this is another shellbark hybrid. You can't really tell from the nut so much, other than it's big, another 4 to 5 gram kernel. And again, these 4 to 5 gram kernels, they might go up in the south. It's a pretty well understood thing that nut size goes up in the south and under certain conditions. This one cracks out beautifully. Not an incredibly productive tree, at least I haven't seen evidence of that yet, but the shell is super thin. This one's 50% kernel, and look, it's coming out just beautifully without any clippers. Here's a half, and well, there's another broken half, but it's pretty big. The last nut I cracked out formed these two pieces. Yeah, crack one more nut for you of this tree. Again, super thin, and some people say shell thickness doesn't matter. It absolutely does. When shell pieces are flying at your eyeballs, you'll realize that it matters. When you're designing machinery to crack these nuts, you'll realize it matters. Machinery wears down faster, and things are more dangerous, and you need to spec out equipment a lot stronger. You might ask how I could tell all of those trees were shellbark hybrids. You can see it in the husk, you can see it in the pollen shed time, and you can see it in the anthracnose resistance, and you can see it in the maturity date. This is one example of a nut. That's another 4 to 5 gram kernel. It's called bench press, but it's not, it doesn't have any of those characteristics. It doesn't have that thick husk, late maturity date. The husk is dehiscent on this one, and the pollination time is mid-season. Well, let's see how this one cracks. This one historically hasn't been a great cracker, but it looks like it's cracking out good for the camera again. Yeah, there's two halves. This nut historically has varied between almost a black walnut flavor and a kind of mild shagbark flavor. And this year flavors are all off. Something was goofy with every shagbark, not just at Badger Set. But this is a pretty cool tree. It's pollen sterile, oscillates between 45 and 50% kernel, and just a beautiful nut. And it produces pretty reliably, pretty well. The track record suggests that it could be one of the higher producing trees at Badger Set. We just have to watch it a couple more years to prove that. Not all nuts are selected for their size. This one, this nut is a Weschke seedling. It's S222 at Badger Set. It's a 53% kernel, And Philip has noted that it's a really consistent annual producer, though the top fell out supposedly from high nut load. I think that's because Weschke genetics tend to be form bad branches. Not always, but I have reason to believe that pattern. It's 52-ish% kernel. This could be oil pressed. It does sometimes produce astringency in the kernel, which is really annoying, and it tends not to crack out that well, even though it's got Weschke genetics and even though the shell is really thin. These are all separate characteristics. But yeah. Before we started recording, I had this nut that was really, not big. It was 2.5 grams. But it was 50% kernel reliably, and it never got a weevil. That's a reason to keep a nut too. And that tree is uniform ripening, and you can shake it down really well, and it's very well dehiscent. That's another Weschke seedling, So, yeah. Anyway, this is another shell bark hybrid. Similar reasons as stated before. And let's see if it cracks side over side. Side over side. Not so great of cracking. Let's see head over heel. If this nut cracks side over side, that would mean that it could work better in my automated cracker. Now this nut cracks head over heel. That means this would not work in my automated cracker, and I don't know how I could get it to work well doing that. This shell seems a lot thicker. I can just see from the shell fragments that this is probably around 40% kernel, making it not in the oil pressing range in the Kern Craft 20 at least. So this is a nut from the wild. It's at a park near me, and it's a hybrid. Probably an F1 between bitternut and shagbark. It kind of has a little bit of that cordiformis shape. And when you crack it out, the shell is thinner than a typical shagbark. This is maybe 43% kernel. But some of the other dead giveaways are that this internal wafer between the two halves is really papery. And the kernel is all brain-like like that and tends to get stuck on the inside. That papery interior is something that shagbarks tend not to have. It's more of a velvet on the inside than like a papery, pecan-y kind of thing. Hard to describe that any better. This tree is really weevil prone, or maybe I was just picking up the nuts so late that all I got was weevils after the squirrels. There aren't that many squirrels at the site because there's public hunting that's permitted. This is a shriveled kernel you can see on the edge that wasn't fully developed. Yeah, this husk being a little thinner and having wings on it is a dead giveaway to it being a hybrid, but the tree looks very hybrid overall. Like it looks like intermediate characteristics in a lot of ways. This would not be pressable for oil even though it's a hybrid. I should also note it is lightly astringent. Doesn't taste that good, and the kernel consistency is a little less oily for some reason. Don't know what to make of that.